When it comes to taking a popular song, changing the lyrics, and producing a comedic version that appeals to 12-year-olds, there's only one game in town: Weird Al Yankovic. For 40 years, this goofy king of polka has been modifying America's biggest hits and singing parodies, mostly based on food. If you're a new band and Weird Al calls, you know you've made it. Through 14 studio albums, 5 Grammy Awards, his own film, and a biopic, Yankovic has been a mainstay of the cultural landscape throughout most of Generation X's lives. So, these two former sophomores are dusting off their childish senses of humor to revisit Even Worse, one of Weird Al's biggest hits. Get yourself some blueberries, lemon juice, simple syrup, and rum to make a blueberry daiquiri for episode 76 of Toasting the Classics, Weird Al Yankovic's Even Worse. Welcome to Toasting the Classics, the podcast where we take something that people call a classic. In this case, I think the claim is a little on the dubious side, but we'll see. We'll see. It's certainly an important album and something that was formative in my life. But anyway, this is a podcast where we take something that people call a classic, we talk about it, we drink something inspired by the purported classic, and we decide whether it should be a classic. My name is Dave McArthur.
And my name is Clint Lanier. We are the experts for the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. So definitely listen to us and everything we have to say.
We may be some of the world's biggest experts on this particular subject at this moment, because I don't know how many people are thinking about this particular artist at any given time in history.
Do you want me to reveal the artist? And
yes. What's the album that you chose?
So this comes from the classically trained composer named Al Yankovic, also known as Weird Al Yankovic. And the album that we're doing is called Even Worse. Now, a lot of people might not know the album title, but you might know the title song is Fat, which is taken from Michael Jackson's Bad. Cover of it's great. It's got him in the same costume as Michael Jackson's Bad, but it's of course Weird Al, so he's got the big flowing afro locks type of thing.
I was actually thinking, I don't know how well remembered the song Bad is today.
Yeah, well, you don't hear a lot of Michael Jackson anymore on the radio.
Well, you don't hear a lot of Michael Jackson for obvious reasons. And by the way,
yeah, it's like, boy, could he dance? Yeah, we probably should do a show on him.
I think Thriller people are still aware of. I think people are still aware of Beat It and some of the other, the Moonwalk and some other Michael Jackson facts, and maybe some stories about his personal life people maybe heard of,
right? A
little bit. But this album, I think, is pretty forgotten. It was huge. It cannot be exaggerated what a big deal the album, and I think the album was called Bad, or is it Smooth Criminal? I'm suddenly doubting myself.
I think it's Bad.
Bad is the name of the album. Okay, right. But it was a big deal. Like, I remember the day the video for Bad came out, like watching it and waiting for it to come out, and it was an event. So when Weird Al was doing a spoof of Bad with his song Fat, you knew every beat of Bad. You knew exactly what he was parodying. It was not an obscure reference point. A lot of the songs on this album are really obscure now, I think, to most people. I think a lot of people would be like, what is this? I'd never heard of this song. So
I owned this album when I was a kid. So this is my choice, ladies and gentlemen, or lady and gentlemen. I owned this, came out in 1988 was when this was released. So I was 12 years old. So that's the target audience for this album is probably 12 to 14 years old, I would say. I was right in there. I owned this cassette. I listened to it all the time.
I was going to ask what medium you had it in. Okay,
it was a cassette because I had the Walkmans. I had a Walkman.
The Walkman, yeah.
When I was a kid. So I listened to this all the time. I thought it was hilarious. I mean, because a 12-year-old, 14-year-old kid will think that, oh boy, especially will think this is funny. Anything that has to do with like dark humor and being fat or throwing up or whatever. I remember 2 episodes. And fat was something that you used to be able to make fun of, or that you used to make fun of all the time. And it wasn't a protected class, as it is now.
Yeah.
And so I remember there was Monty Python's Meaning of Life came out around this time. I would say late 80s. It was, I think, the last Monty Python movie. And one of the skits in there was this guy that goes into the restaurant, and he was in a fat suit. He was huge, this big old huge guy. He was ordering everything on the menu until at the very end, he orders like some cracker with cheese on it and literally explodes, just blows up. That was the whole skit.
All right.
And so that was a skit. And so Weird Al Yankovic blowing up like a blimp.
Yeah.
His buttons like busting off, which was a huge gag. The buttons would bust off and hit somebody in the head. That was something that you could do. You can't do that now. I think the whole body shaming.
No, the word fat shaming did not exist in 1988. That would have just what are you talking about? What do you mean fat shaming?
Well, fat shaming would have been accepted. This is something my grandma would do. We'd go out with my grandma.
Oh God, yes.
And she'd see somebody, an overweight person. She'd be like, "Good Lord, look at that," in her Oklahoma accent. So fat shaming was something society did to overweight people. Now it's considered boorish or rude or insensitive if you shame somebody for their weight, right?
Yeah. Well, it's cruel, right? There was an Onion article, and I can't get the phrasing exactly right, but it said something along the lines of millions of Americans bravely resisting Hollywood standards of body images.
Bravely,
a picture of
exactly.
All these overweight people. It's like, well, those standards, they're really not doing a lot of not affecting a lot of people, right. Apparently. So
that was the main song on this. He made cut a music video for Fat, and he mimicked all of Michael Jackson's dance moves. Did a decent job, I think, for a Jew that plays the accordion. He's
not okay, you're ruining one of my biggest surprises.
What?
Not Jewish.
Oh, he's not Jewish?
No. I think I'm going to go on record right now and say that's my biggest surprise. Although if I thought about it, Yankovic is just like a Croatian, Slovakian type, Polish, like a Slavic last name. Yeah. No, not Jewish. And it's funny because my wife goes through these things where somebody will mention that someone's Jewish, and then she'll look up other celebrities and be like, "Did you know this guy's Jewish? Did you know this guy's Jewish?" And so the other day I was like, "Do you know who's not Jewish? Weird Al Yankovic." Like,
wow,
fits the profile in some strange way, but.
It must be a Mandela effect or something. I read his bio just like you did, but I don't know how I missed that.
No, yeah, he's Christian actually. His family's, I would say, some kind of Orthodox Christian, but I can't actually remember. But
interesting.
I think he was kind of religious growing up, actually. But
I'm glad I didn't choose Manowitz wine.
Just what I was Manischewitz? No, Manischewitz would not be appropriate. But maybe maybe one of those brandies from Eastern Europe, a Slivovitz type fruity type of thing would have been appropriate. We could have found.
No, he did. I know he's done music videos where he's like a rabbi or something in them. I just can't.
He did one where he was Amish too. He's not.
Yeah, he did. The Amish Paradise.
Yeah, I think. And actually, that might be the Mandela effect there. You may have seen him dressed up like he was Amish and then conflated that with him being Hasidic and then figured that
it might have been. Yeah, that might have been for sure.
I don't know if that counts as my biggest surprise, but I'm putting that out there as
that's a big surprise. Yeah, you got me.
It did sort of surprise me. It did sort of surprise me. And I don't even 100% know why, but whatever. He kind of looks like the way my stepdad looked when he was a young man. Huh? They have like a very similar look. Yeah. So I think I just kind of conflated the two people in my head because I think my stepdad is the one that introduced me to Weird Al Yankovic because he was a fan of all that novelty comedy music, like everything that would have been on the Dr. Demento show back in the 70s and 80s. So grandma got run over by a reindeer and stuff like that. So
Shaving Cream, do you remember that one?
No, what's that?
It's a song about at the end of every line, it's a word that rhymes. Well, it ends with it. And then he stuck his hand in
and then he says shaving cream.
Shaving cream, right? Yeah, that's the whole joke throughout the song. Then there's like fish heads, roly poly fish heads. I think
I remember that. I remember fish heads. Yeah, that was on Mad Movies. Was a show on Nickelodeon when I was a kid that used to do a video of that. And there was a lot of that sort of comedy music back in the day. I don't know if that's it is a genre today, but it would all be on YouTube. There's probably 10 times as much material in terms of comedy music, but it's just on YouTube. Things like What Does the Fox Say and stuff like that. That would fill the role.
That's actually a really good point that he was actually a signed celebrity. I mean, he was a signed talent. So, I mean, they actually had to go in a production studio and make a record just like Michael Jackson had to lay down.
Well, I was thinking when you buy, so you said you had the tapes. My friends I actually never owned a Weird Al Yankovic tape. But one of my friends, this like infamous Eddie Haskell bad boy kid on the bus named Mike Pfaff, always had the Weird Al Yankovic stuff. He had like 20 of his tapes and he would loan them. I remember borrowing them and being just in heaven for a couple of days if I could borrow a Weird Al Yankovic tape. For some reason, my parents wouldn't let me get them. I don't know why. But anyway, I remember listening to all of these and just being really happy to have them. But you'd listen to them and they're pretty good without the comedy, they're pretty good versions of the actual songs. Like it sounds just,
Oh,
it's not a comedy, it's the real song. It sounds just like it.
right.
So it was almost like you had a greatest hits tape
Mhm.
with a bunch of good songs on it. You could just listen to
Right,
them as
right.
if it, what do we have here? I mean, we've got Michael Jackson,
Mhm.
right? George Harrison. I'm already forgetting which one of these songs match up, but La Bamba is lasagna. You got Tiffany.
Think we're a clone. I
A
think I'm a
couple of them
clone.
original. I think, yeah, I think I'm a clone now.
Billy
Alimony
Idol.
is Billy Idol. Then you got the Beastie Boys. And I wouldn't have been into a James Taylor song, but apparently Good Old Days is the style of James Taylor. But
I didn't get that until I listened to it for this show. I was thinking, this is James Taylor. That's exactly who this is. But when I was a
yeah,
kid, it was just a funny song. It's about a
right,
song about some psychopath that turns
right.
into a serial killer, basically.
One of them was in the style of the Police, and now was that Melanie?
No, the Police was Velvet Elvis.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
okay.
was style of
Interesting.
Police. That you can
Oh,
see.
yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah, yeah,
can,
there it is. I wrote it down.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Synchronicity or
yeah.
something like that. It's got that same recurring like driving guitar sound that goes along with that song. So I think that one's kind of based on that. But yeah, this is a different era in terms of what was considered politically correct.
Huh?
And I don't know whether probably there would have been people even in 1988 that would have complained about things like that. But like, I've got more chins than Chinatown. I don't think you could say that today.
All those
That's not,
jokes. When I sit around the
not
house, I really sit around the house, and
but that's just a fat joke. But I mean, this one's like an Asian,
oh,
like
Asian.
anti-Asian. I don't even know if it's really not, I don't think all that offensive to say that sometimes Chinese people might be named Chin, although I don't know. Yeah, Chen, I guess that could be true, but I don't know how offensive that is. But today
Oh,
you would not be able to say that for sure, for sure.
sure.
I can't remember which song it was, but he uses the word midget, and you definitely can't say that.
That was Stuck in a Closet with Vanna White.
Is that where he mentions it? Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Have you ever heard the John Mulaney bit about that word?
Uh,
He said midget in a comedy bit,
huh?
and the producer was like, "You can't say that word. It's like saying the N word." And John Mulaney was like, "Listen, if there's two words and you can't even say one of them because it's bad, that's the worst word. It's definitely worse than midget. Like,
Right.
fine, I won't say midget anymore if it's offensive, but those are not the same thing at
That's
all."
not the same thing. That's great. Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, dude, would one come up to the other one and say, "What's up, my midget?"
Oh yeah.
I don't see it, right?
But if anybody can say it, I'm sure it would be an actual little person could say
I'm sure.
the M word.
There's so many words we can't say anymore, and I'm sure at some point Weird Al has said them all. Actually, you know what I enjoy calling people? Unitard.
Uh-oh.
They don't know how to react to it because it's got the part tard is in there, but
Yep.
it's unitard. So I say,
When
well,
we use the word moutarde, which is
mutard.
French for mustard. That's what
That's
I've been
right.
calling when my kids do something silly. I call them moutarde, and I've just recently realized I should probably stop doing
I'll
that.
always
But
stop. Well, people
you
always
know,
kind of pause and like go, like I see their eyes kind of go up for a minute because they're
right?
thinking like, did he say, what did he say? He said,
Did he just say what I think he just said? Yeah. Well,
"You
anyway, we could get
leotard."
into it. We could get into a discussion about that. But
Point is, it was a different age, different time.
oh yes,
We were telling
oh
we were
yes.
telling fat jokes,
Well,
and
you know what? You know what?
television.
I'm gonna get into it, and I'm gonna refer to it as the R word just to be nice, because that's fine. It's not a class of people I want to offend by any stretch, or people that But that word was not intended to be something rude. It was meant to be actually like a scientific or a medical
Oh,
term for people
well,
that had a certain the R word. The R word.
it just means stopped. I mean,
It just means slow. It just means
slow down, or
slower
slow down.
mental development than other people.
Like you
And
can't,
so,
and I'm going to say it like you can retard a carburetor. It means
right.
slowing down the amount of fuel that goes into it. It slows down the engine. I mean, that's what it's,
Yeah.
meant to indicate.
The word just became offensive because it referred to something that people would make fun of each other for being, and then it became offensive. So whatever people are using now is eventually going to become offensive again.
Will, I mean, that's
So
what language does. Language is living, and the thing is, like, we have to share meaning for language to be viable, right? Like if I say a word, you and I have to share the same meaning of that word, to laugh about it, or to just to understand what we're saying. And I mean, it's all semiotics is where it comes from, but the branch of linguistics that
right.
studies this stuff. But when you try to apply a social value on language and say you have to share the same social value I share about this particular thing, It simply doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. Language only works when society as a whole uses it or doesn't use it in a certain way. So you're never going to get rid of the use of certain words. You can put taboos on it and you can limit it all you want, limit it in print, limit it certainly in broadcast. I would never say the N-word, in any of our shows or anything like that. But people are still going to have it. It's still going to be out there, You're never going to eradicate it completely unless we flash forward.
Well, I was born into the conversation a long time past when anybody ever would have said the N-word. Like I never heard anybody use that word when I was growing up, like at all. That was at least where I grew up, that was a dead word. That was not something anybody said. So
my grandma used it referring to, she was from Oklahoma in the 1920s.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she would. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So,
I don't know if I feel like I told this story before, but my grandfather used to use the word Negro when I was a kid. And it was so embarrassing to me. It was like, can you please not? But, and of course it sounds super old fashioned today, but it was actually what decent people said when he was young. That was what like people
as
who were
as an alternative to the really bad word.
Well, not even just that was the proper word for referring to African Americans in his time. That was what people who were in the civil rights movement and stuff would say. So, I thought it was offensive, but I was like, it just changed. It's just a new word. But anyway, whatever. We're getting very off the topic of
getting in the weeds. Well, now we have the F word, which is fat.
Right. We're not allowed to say that in my family because my wife is a bariatric surgeon, so we have to try to be very delicate about the use of that word because that one's hurtful.
That one is hurtful. But there used to be a time when you could have fat jokes.
Right.
Essentially, that's what this song is completely comprised of. Is it's nothing but fat jokes.
Pretty much, yeah.
When I fall, the pavement cracks. Go to the beach, I'm the only one that gets a tan. And a lot of these were, remember Yo Mama jokes? Yo Mama's so fat.
Yes.
She goes to the beach. She's the only one that gets a tan. Or
those are all good snaps. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. A lot of those are taken from that. The chins got more chins than Chinatown. That one, like you said, probably couldn't be.
You just wouldn't say it today. I think if you analyzed got more chins than Chinatown, you'd find it's not really offensive. It's like saying lots of English people are named Smith or lots of Latin people are named Martin. It's really not particularly offensive, but you just wouldn't say it today. You'd just be walking into a wall of
got more Smiths
and arrows.
Got more Smiths than a medieval city. I don't know. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really.
So was this the only music video he made, I believe? Or
I don't think so.
No, I mean from this album.
From this album, it very well might have been. I very much remember some of these other songs, but I don't remember there being another video.
Now, I remember this video actually showing on MTV. Like they would play this.
Yeah, me too.
As if it was another music video. And did you know that he won a Grammy for best concept video for
this one?
For the fat video, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Isn't that crazy? Again, something
a little bit of a slap in the face to MJ there because we came up with the original material.
right.
But whatever. So I don't. You know what I don't remember is I don't remember were these songs played on the radio, and they were okay because I don't remember. I remember MTV definitely.
Fat certainly was, and I feel like I heard this song is just 6 words long. I feel like I heard that one on the radio too, and that one, George Harrison's original is such a terrible song.
I like that song.
I got my mind set on you. It really is.
I like it, but simple, I have to say this one is funny. This one points out that the song is very simple and stupid,
there's a line in that song. There's a line in his song goes. Let's see. He's like,
gonna take
he's like, I know if I put my mind to it, I know I can find a good rhyme here. So he doesn't find a rhyme, but he's making fun of the point that George Harrison says, I know if I put my mind to it, I can do it. I mean, come on. That's above.
It's actually one of the only times in Weird Al's career where, and I'm trying to think how to express this, but like the song Fat just takes the rhyme with the word bad and then is a completely different concept. Unrelated to the original song, right? It's just a completely different concept, unrelated. The words just kind of rhyme. It's not a parody of the song itself. It's a little bit of the style of the video because he kind of looks the same in the video, the outfit and stuff. This song is just 6 words long. Is actually making fun of the composition of the original song. It's a different level of satire that I think is funnier. I was listening to that and I was like, that's a funny song. That was written by the same guy that wrote Here Comes the Sun.
And that's what kills me about it. It's like, come on, you can do better than that, George Harrison. I mean, you really could.
He didn't need to. That song was a huge hit. I think that song might have been a #1 hit.
It probably was.
I got my mind set on you. I think that was a #1 hit. And I don't think it was necessarily because I remember hearing it when I was a kid. I didn't know who George Harrison was. I didn't know who George Harrison was when I was a little kid. And I just liked that song anyway. So it wasn't just because he was woo George Harrison. I think that song was catchy and it was popular for a reason.
Because you were a little kid.
Yeah, but I wasn't the one buying all the albums. I mean, it was a #1 song. People, as far as I remember, I could be quoting that wrong, but I think that was a Billboard #1.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Like 87 or something.
That doesn't change the fact that it's a terrible song.
It's very simplistic. Maybe sometimes they're sort of trying to prove that something's simple. I always thought that about the White Stripes. The White Stripes try to do a lot with very little. They have these minimalist compositions that are actually really effective, and it's kind of like the title of their band, White Stripes. So I think that's kind of what was going on with that song.
When I was a kid, and this is something just kind of generally speaking about the songs, a song like the song is just 6 words long and fat, those were funny. I could understand them, and I could understand why they were funny. But I didn't get Alimony until I really listened to it this time.
Right.
I was laughing out loud. I mean, bleeding me dry like a bony. I mean, just it cracked me up. Absolutely cracked me up with everything I know now. And then the James Taylor, These Are the Good Old Days, or those were the good old days. It was funny as a kid because
it's kind of a funny subject for a song, right? It just sounds kind of funny. But I was listening. Dark. I wasn't thinking James Taylor, but I was like, okay, this is like a spoof of these 70s folk songs, like in general.
Yeah.
I didn't really pick up on it being specifically James Taylor until I read that later. But when I did, I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly who they're. It's like if you had a song that was sort of vaguely Jack Johnson, vaguely Dave Matthews from the 90s, like as a parody, you'd know the genre that was being parodied, but maybe not the specific song. So, one point I wanted to make. So I definitely think that this show should be about Weird Al, not just about Even Worse. And the reason for that is that I want to stave off the possibility of having to do another Weird Al Yankovic album at some time in the future. Like
I'm fine.
I want to head that off at the pass. But
I picked Even Worse because I think it's his best-selling album.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's one of his best.
Kind of like what we've done with comedy albums. Like we took the first or the last for George Carlin. We did that sort of with Bill Cosby, but.
Actually, I don't think it is his best selling. I think his best selling ones were actually in the 90s, long after I was listening to him. I think the one with Amish Paradise, or possibly the one with Smells Like Teen Spirit, what it smells like Nirvana or whatever it was. I completely did not hear any of that stuff in the 90s, but he was selling millions of albums off of those and like winning Grammys and stuff. So I think one of those is actually his #1 selling album, but it makes sense to go back to the beginning like this, I think.
I didn't want to go back all the way to the beginning because that's clearly as good.
No, not all the way. What are we doing about a drink?
Oh, so we are having what's called a blueberry daiquiri.
Okay. Why that? What does that have to do with?
Well, in 1989, Weird Al came out with a best movie ever made called UHF. Did you ever see it?
I have a vague memory of watching parts of it once at somebody's house. A friend that I definitely associate with Weird Al. Like it's 100% my friend's sense of humor is Weird Al to this day, Weird Al Yankovic. But I don't remember if I ever actually watched the whole thing.
There's a scene in there where he goes into this dive bar and he orders a blueberry daiquiri, which is it's one of those out of place type of drinks. So I went with that because Weird Al doesn't drink.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Or do drugs. So I was like, well, we'll go with that. And so it's 2 ounces of rum. It's half ounce of simple syrup. It's half juice from half a lemon, and then about a half a cup or a quarter cup to half a cup of blueberries. Shake it up really hard and then strain it. And there you go. I muddled mine instead of shaking.
You did what?
Muddled it.
What does that mean?
Muddled it. Where you squish them. So I squished the blueberries with the muddler is where you squish it.
I actually just kind of crushed them a little bit in my hand before I dropped them in. So I just have blueberries in there, but
sort of what I was talking about. So I did that, threw it all in there, mixed it with some ice. In my case, I stirred it up, but again, you can shake it really hard and then strain it, and then you are good to go. And it's pretty tasty. What do you think?
No, it's a good drink. I like it. I had trouble finding the ingredients, and the instructions for the lemon juice were just half a lemon worth of lemon juice, which to me was a very vague instruction because I had lemon juice. So I just tried to guess about that. And then I went to the store. I went to a liquor store. I asked for simple syrup, and I tried the grocery store too. Both places, I just got people looking at me with that look that like recent immigrants give you when they're just like, "Can you please just go away and let me do my job? I have no idea what you're talking about."
Right.
Like the other day, I went to Walmart. We're on the road. I was on a road trip with Alex, and he wanted to get a road atlas, like a paper road atlas for the trip, so we could look at things and figure out where there was. Anyway, so I go and ask the guy. The guy 100% is like a native English speaker. And I'm like, do you guys have a road atlas somewhere? And he looks at me like, what? And I was about to give up and be like, they don't have a road atlas. And I realized he didn't know what a road atlas was. So I was like, it's like a book with maps in it. And he was like, oh, why didn't you just say that? And I was like, well, I thought I did.
Atlas, yeah.
And then I was thinking about it afterwards, and I was thinking, well, he looks like probably he's bilingual. And I was thinking like, what is the word for atlas in Spanish? And I'm like, I think it's Atlas, and I looked it up, and it's Atlas. The word for Atlas in Spanish.
How old was that guy?
The problem was the guy was too young to have ever seen a paper road atlas. He had no idea what the object was.
If he's a millennial, he has no idea.
Not even. Whatever comes below the millennials. Like this kid was probably like 23 or something like that. Whatever. A gazennial or whatever. I don't know.
I think there's millennial and then Gen Z. I don't know, but yeah, it's before the time, before
one of those. Yeah. It's just kind of funny. It's strange. They still sell them at Walmart, by the way, because there's old people like me driving around the country who occasionally
I think tactile is coming back into style,
I mean, to some extent, these old analog things, some of them do, right? The example I always use is that it's 2023 and there are still horse people all over the place. There are people who love to own a horse, who love to ride horses. It's a lot less people than there used to be back in the day, but there's still people that like horses. There's still people that have vinyl records. There's still people. Myself, the thing that's never going away, as long as I'm still drawing breath on this earth, I will have paper books. I love books. It's one of my favorite things in life is like the feel of a good book. And I feel like that's a deep enough one that there will always be some people who like to own books and like to have books.
Totally agree.
It'll be less people than it used to be, but I think that'll always exist.
So what does any of this have to do with Weird Al?
I was looking for simple syrup at the store. And no one understood. I was literally trying to think, what is the word for simple syrup in Spanish? And I just gave up. I was like, I think I could come up with something, but I don't even think it would translate necessarily. Like, I think it actually would be siropa simple. But I don't.
You'd probably have to say like agua de sucre.
Yeah, but that would have entailed me thinking about what exactly simple syrup was.
So you made
it was only once I gave up trying to buy it, I was like, can I make it? And I was like, oh, well, it's just sugar and water. So yes, I could make that at home. So that was when I realized I could have described it, but then I would have felt stupid trying to buy it. They would have been just like, why don't you just make that? You can just make that at your house. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up making my own simple syrup, which is kind of cool. I had to do something new and expand my horizons for the show. That's always good. So,
well, it's a good drink. So
it is a good drink. It's tangy. It's tangy.
What
proportions did you use of lemon juice and everything did you end up with? Because I think I may have ended up with too much lemon juice.
Lemon juice, yeah, you can go easy on that. I'd say probably a teaspoon and a half, couple teaspoons, maybe tablespoon.
Okay, I used a lot more than that.
Yeah, you don't. It goes pretty far, so you don't need a lot of it. Yeah, that's it. Just mix it all together. Away you go.
Well, the guy described it as tasting like blueberry lemonade. So that's what I'm getting. I mean, I can taste a little bit of the rum. I can taste a little bit of lemon. So it turned out okay, but a little tangy.
So yeah, I think making this more about Weird Al is probably a good idea. That's sort of my intention.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'll be passing judgment on is Weird Al as a whole.
Right. Good.
Because I have a feeling if it was just going to be this album, it would be difficult to call this a classic. And you know why? We've talked about this before, but if I were going to like get an album for Alex, a 12-year-old, try to introduce him to something, and I gave him this, he'd listen to it and he might kind of laugh at a couple of the songs, but he wouldn't have any idea what the reference points were for most of this music.
Right.
Stuck in a closet with Vanna White. Be like, who is Vanna White? I mean, she's still on TV today. Amazingly enough.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would have any idea who she was. So she's like the road atlas of TV personalities. Like she still exists because there's old people that remember who she was. But I don't know about how the album would fare. But Weird Al as a whole, I think, is a more interesting case for being a
So
classic.
would you say that Weird Al has somehow passed this threshold into national treasure?
Well, that would be part of the discussion of whether he's a classic. But when I look at the amount of, so there's three. Where is this? Where is this factor? There's three artists to have had a top 40 hit in every decade: 80s, 90s, aughts, and teens.
Mhm.
One is Michael Jackson, which I heard that and I was like, what was his top 40 hit in the teens? Wasn't he dead?
Right.
But anyway, the other is Madonna. That makes sense. I think Madonna probably still putting out top 40 hits not that long ago. And the other is Weird Al Yankovic. And I think that's kind of hard to just dismiss somebody like that. All of them are all people that were popular in the 80s, oddly enough.
He's had a biopic already.
Yeah,
recently.
I saw that with Daniel Radcliffe. I haven't seen it.
Right.
But, well, isn't UHF kind of a biopic about Weird Al, or is that a fictional?
No, it's a fictional show because it's
okay.
a TV station. I don't know. It seems like to me, it seems like everybody's kind of like if Weird Al does your song, it's like a big deal.
Right.
Right. It's become like you've arrived.
That's what Kurt Cobain said when he went to Kurt Cobain and said, "Do you mind if I do this?" And Kurt Cobain was like, "Oh no, that sounds great," because he was thinking, "Wow, we really are we're a big deal if Weird Al's covering our stuff." So
yeah. And so I think he's become this sort of person that and it's true. Like you don't hear anything bad about him. He doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs, so he's not acting like a bad boy. There aren't any, there's no salacious gossip about him, nothing like that. No stories about, him getting handsy with a cocktail waitress or something.
Nothing. I haven't heard any such thing, and probably a lot of that has to do with not drinking and not doing drugs.
Not doing drugs, not drinking.
That'll probably keep you from getting into a lot of the trouble that people get into.
He's been married to the same woman, the entire time he's been married.
Like Joe Namath leaning over and trying to kiss the sports lady. I think that had to do with him being hammered more so than anything else.
I felt bad for him when he did that.
Yeah,
he embarrassed me doing that. But
yeah, that was painful. But I don't see anything negative in this guy's bio. There's really nothing here that changes my opinion of him as being like a pretty good guy. Like it's the kind of person. It's a little bit of a silly career, but at the same time, you're like, oh, I'm glad a guy like that had a good career out of the way he's carried himself and conducted himself. And I always wondered growing up, I was like, how is this legal? Right? I never understood. How can you make money off somebody else wrote the song? How can you do a parody of it and then make so much money? It's not like he's not making money off of it. It's not some sort of public service message that he's doing by parodying a song. So it's nothing like that. And apparently, according to what I read, he does not need permission at all. This would be covered by fair use doctrine.
Yeah,
which to me, I don't get that. Maybe I don't understand this particular facet of fair use doctrine. Fair use doctrine to me would be if you and I are talking about a song and we play a little snippet of it and we say, okay, does everybody remember this song now? And that would further the conversation that we're having about the work of art. And that to me would be fair use. But I don't really understand how
but I think
copying somebody's song and then selling it.
But I think parody is a special class of fair use, though. Parody is.
It must be. It must be. But I don't know if I get that. I get why parody, like if I'm parodied, let's say I parody a political figure, that would be something that would be within the public interest, that we're allowed to make fun of public figures and comment on them. But I don't understand why Michael Jackson's work in writing that song, and then you go and just play it again with different words. Why? I feel like you'd almost have to pay Michael Jackson for that. That doesn't make sense to me.
Mad Magazine got away with, they would do logos and they would parody a logo.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So it looked like the same logo. There's a case right now. I think it's still ongoing. You should look it up and see. But it was Jack Daniels was suing like some soap manufacturer or something like that for using like a parody of their of the Jack Daniels logo to sell their stuff. And that wouldn't be considered, I think the company is trying to claim that it's a parody of it. But see, like Mad Magazine got away with it.
So I think I can kind of see I can see the boundary of the doctrine there. And the boundary of the doctrine there for me is that, yes, like you said, I think their attempt is to parody Jack Daniels and sell something that looks like Jack Daniels, ha ha ha. But Jack Daniels would be very reasonable in thinking that a customer who purchased that might think Jack Daniels was getting money from that, and that it was sold by Jack Daniels. And so therefore that company is like almost ruining the reputation of Jack Daniels, or potentially ruining the reputation of Jack Daniels. I guess maybe nobody would ever think this was Michael Jackson that did this.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Maybe that's the boundary. I don't know. It's interesting because you're right. Mad Magazine would do like a Star Wars parody.
Yeah.
Now, you're telling me George Lucas, when he was making all that money, he didn't want a couple bucks from, because that was one of my favorite Mad Magazine issues ever. Like that Star Wars one was really it was really funny to me when I was a little kid. And by the way, Mad Magazine, Weird Al, that's the same kind of thing. Yeah, but the same kind of humor. It's very sophomoric. I remember reading one about 48 Hours, which by the way I've never seen, which would be a great film to do on this show because I've never seen 48 Hours. Okay. But anyway, I remember laughing really hard at that, and I'd never even seen the movie. I just thought it was funny parody. I didn't really get the legal standard, but the thing is, apparently he always gets permission from every single artist he's ever done. And there's been a couple of snafus with that where their people told him yes, but the artist didn't know about it, or vice versa. The people said no, but the artist didn't mind. And I think specifically Lady Gaga found out he'd done a parody, and she was totally cool with it, but her people had said no, and so the wires got crossed there. And I think that, I don't know if that was actually the one, but I thought it was a really funny Polka Face is just perfect Weird Al. I mean, that's an absolutely perfect. That's like right out there, just awesome. Waiting for Weird Al. When you call your song Poker Face, you have to expect Weird Al come up with Polka Face, but I don't actually think that was the one that was the issue. But the one who got really mad about it was Coolio. Yeah, and he made a lot of money off that. It was one of his really big hits. I think that's Amish. Yeah, it is. It's Amish Paradise. But apparently Coolio was like borderline threatening to kill him. Like Weird Al was kind of looking over his shoulder for a little while for Coolio.
I think they made up though. He said Weird Al said they made up, and his wires, like you said, wires got crossed, and he thought. Right. It was okay. I think his people said it was okay, but Coolio didn't quite understand or know about it, or didn't agree with it, or whatever.
I think that is what happened. Yeah, I think that is exactly what happened. And Prince would never let him do anything. Prince was very against it.
Prince, which there's a ton that he could have done.
Oh yeah, and also just parodying Prince's style.
Yeah.
But that's what Prince would have said no to, because his style, he was so serious about that stuff, and I don't think he had a good sense of humor like at all. As a human being, Prince. So I don't think he would have been into that. Like, I don't think he would have been into being parodied. And that's what Michael Jackson said about, it was a parody of Black or White called Snack All Night, which I can already start writing that in my head. But he just was, he was taking his message in his song very seriously and didn't let Weird Al cover it.
Although Eat It and Fat, was there any more? He had those two.
No, it was just the two. He just did the two Michael Jackson ones. I think he was even kind of reluctant to do Snack All Night because he didn't want to be seen as always parodying Michael Jackson, like going back, because he did have two big hits, because Eat It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. And I remember thinking as a kid, I was like, okay, he's got to do one. We were trying to come up with what's he going to do with Thriller. He's got to do like a parody of Thriller, but we could never come up with anything good.
You know that he doesn't open his own mail.
Okay.
He hires somebody to open the mail for him. And the reason why is so that he can't be accused of ripping off ideas, because people send him ideas all the time. Right?
Yeah, sure. That's funny.
So what will happen is the reader will open it first and read it and say, okay, and then they throw it away. Right. Because they can't have any like undue influence or anything like that. And that happens all the time. Like if you go to a movie studio and you say, hey, I've got an idea for a movie, they're like, nope, don't want to hear it. If you send it to us, it'll go in the trash, because they don't want to get accused of, well, you ripped me off.
Ripped it off. Yeah, that's smart. I never really thought about it. I actually had a great idea for a Star Wars script the other day, or a Star Wars like trilogy. And I was thinking, how would one go about proposing a original material to something? Because you can't write it yourself, obviously. Right. And this particular idea makes no sense if it's not in the Star Wars world, universe, whatever. And I was driving along thinking about it the other day while we were on this big road trip. And I really was, what do? You just got to like maybe know somebody, or like meet some guy that works for Disney or something like that. I don't even know how. Anyway, yeah, that's really funny that he does that. I like that.
You'd have to get an agent. My son Jaron, actually, he wrote a letter to Legoland, or to Lego rather.
Uh-huh.
He's like, hey, I got a really good idea for a set of Legos that you guys should do. And he's like, says, hey, I'm Jaron. I was 10, he was 10 at the time. I'm 10 years old. I love your toys. I have this great idea for a set. You guys should do it about this thing. And I can't even remember what it was, right?
Right.
Sends it off to him. He has us look up their address, send it off to him. He gets a letter back from Lego like 5 weeks later or something like that.
Uh-huh.
He says, that's a really cool idea. Thanks so much for sharing it with us. We'll definitely, think about it. Of course they won't, but we'll definitely think about it. And thank you so much for being such a loyal Lego fan. And Legos hire a lot, we hire a lot of engineers and designers and stuff. So maybe,
Very cool.
very cool, right?
Yeah.
So he was like, he actually had me frame the letter, hangs it up in his
Of
room.
course. No, that's a great letter. I would definitely hold on
Then,
to that.
in the meantime, we go to Universal Studios, Orlando, get back, and he's like, "Oh, I got this idea for like a ride for them. Do you think I can send him a letter?" I said, "Sure." So so sit down, and he types it all out on his mommy's computer, and we send it out to him. We get a letter back from Universal Legal
Oh, wow.
because we do not accept
Unsolicited. Yeah. Right.
ideas and blah blah blah. Got
What
it.
a bunch
It was
of jerks.
all this legal stuff, and I was like, did you mention you were like 11 when you wrote things? Like, yeah, it's like the first thing I told him. My name's Jaron and I'm 11
Wow.
years old. I'm like,
Well, that's probably the difference between an American company and a Danish
Dutch.
one,
Yeah,
right?
Dutch.
They're
God,
probably a little more
what a
a little
bunch
more
of
chill. It's funny. I took I don't know if your kids ever watched the show The Wildcrats. It's like a
yeah,
show where
yeah,
these
yeah.
two
Huh?
guys they go
Oh
and
yeah, you told me about this. Yeah.
animals all over the world. So they had a live appearance in El Paso, and I went down there with the kids, and Alex was talking to me, and he was like, I think they should do a show about tardigrades, water bears.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was like, actually, that's a really good idea. I think they should do a show about that. And so we go up and he shakes the guy's hand and he's like, I think you guys should do a show about, oh no, he says, do you know what a tardigrade is? And
Mhm.
Chris Pratt was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, do you think we should do a show about tardigrades? And Alex was like, yeah, you should. And he was like, we should do that. And I was looking at his face. I was like, he's not kidding. That's actually a good idea. And the next season they had a show about tardigrades
That's awesome.
and I would have never been like, oh my God, he stole my kid's idea. It's just an animal that
What
exists
did
in the real world. I
what did
thought it was
Alex think?
great. I thought it was really cool if it was even sort of possible that he
Yeah.
gave him an idea. I was like, go
That's
for it.
so cool. I mean, how else do you get kids to like put themselves out there and get ideas and offer ideas and stuff if
Yeah, absolutely.
shoot it down from legal? Darn,
Yeah, that
no,
sucks.
no offense, but darn lawyers.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's an adversarial system. There's a lawyer on the other side that would go after you if you didn't do that. So
That's a good point. All right. So coming back around, it's about that time. So that was your biggest surprise. Do you have a second biggest surprise since I already spoiled the first one?
okay, so a serious surprise,
Okay.
and it really is actually my biggest surprise. The him not being Jewish thing is kind of a joke, but
Uh-huh.
I noticed when I looked at his bio and it said the names of his parents, I noticed they had the same death date. And I was thinking, oh my God, like what happened? And I read through the whole thing, through the whole article about his biography. And apparently this is in 2004. So these must have been elderly people, well into their 70s.
Yeah.
They had a carbon monoxide leak in their house and it killed them.
Oh no.
His two parents had just died on the same day. I read that. For some reason, because he seems like such a normal guy and because I've known about him my whole life, I really empathized. Like I was like, man, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. That really, I don't know why that wasn't bigger news or something. It just seemed,
And
I
you
don't
can
know, it just seemed
imagine
like,
that he was probably pretty close to his parents too.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It sounds like he was like a good kid. His parents really loved him. Like seemed like he was close to them and they were pretty normal people, good parents. He was an only child, if I remember right.
Yeah,
Super weird when he was growing up, like super nerdy, which not
yeah.
particularly surprising. But that was my biggest surprise in reading it through, just to have that kind of gigantic
Debbie Downer of a surprise,
Yeah, it was a big one. It was a big one. I also before you come up with your big surprise, I forgot to mention the thing where he got the LASIK surgery
Mhm.
and just completely changed his look.
Yeah.
And for him to not have the glasses, it was kind of like when Jennifer Grey got her nose done.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what do you like? I'm surprised Weird Al's career continued after that, but that's
Not just glasses, but the big clunky nerd glasses.
yeah. Like the
that was
glasses are a big
yeah,
part of his
yeah.
shtick. If I was him, I would have just gotten the LASIK but worn like glasses with
Yeah.
no, non pharmaceutical glasses.
Right.
Anyway,
All right. So
what
my surprise here.
your biggest surprise, right?
Biggest surprise on fat. So he went up and asked Michael Jackson, "Hey, would you mind if we did a parody of Fat?" And he already knew Michael Jackson would beat it. And Michael says, "Sure." Sorry, he's trying to talk. He says, anyway, he says, "Sure, go ahead." And he says, "Do you want to use our set?"
Yeah.
He's like,
That was
"What?"
cool.
And turns out that they hadn't taken down the set yet from Michael Jackson's music video Bad. So the set, if you ever watch that video, that's the exact same set from the Bad video, and it's almost shot for shot. And they used his same choreographer.
Oh, that's even cooler.
So they did all the
I didn't know that.
He did all the same dance moves, or he tried to do the same dance moves, but in a fat suit.
Wow.
I think he pulled it off.
I think he pulled it off. Yeah, I remember thinking it was pretty passable.
Yeah, my sort of surprises there. So, I guess let's render a verdict. It's all in your court now. What do you think?
Is the prosecution going to rest without saying anything? Or
No. Let me make a closing statement.
Yeah.
For my part, again, I think he's somehow past this point of like he's become kind of a national treasure, kind of like Dolly Parton. Like there was a time when Dolly Parton,
literally the example I was thinking of. I'm not even kidding.
When she was sort of a punchline, right? I mean, she was a punchline for all these other jokes, but now she's become this person that, oh my God, Dolly Parton just spoke about this particular subject. Maybe we should.
Right.
And she donates money and she helps people and everything else, and she can do no wrong. And part of it's because she keeps such a low profile, except when she does something charitable, right? She just does it. And now you see her with like modern rock stars and stuff like that, and she's doing duets and stuff. That's sort of like what Weird Al has become. Like he went from this guy that was sort of a punchline, right, and was doing punchlines about everybody, to this guy that everybody like somehow reveres. I don't know if revere is the right word, but he's become sort of this national treasure. He's like now on this other plane where he can sort of do no wrong. So that says a lot. His origin story, I mean, he was really into this stuff. He was 19 years old. He did this with his accordion. My Baloney.
No, he was 16. He was 16 when he first got on Dr. Demento. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, he's been at it forever. It seems like he does it for the pleasure of doing it. It was never about making money, never about being a star. It was just, he wanted to do this thing, right?
By the way, speaking of the whole fair use doctrine thing, the song My Sharona that My Bologna is based on, independently of Weird Al, because they don't get any money from this, is one of the most successful songs based on royalties, like just singles of all time.
Really?
And for some reason, the Knack actually gets every single dollar for every time that song, like the song was in Reality Bites and a whole bunch of other things over the years, and they get every single dollar from it. So it's like one of the most profitable. I think the guy said he spent like 3 hours writing it. It was like one of the most profitable 3 hours that's ever existed in capitalism history. But anyway. And yet Weird Al is not giving them anything.
Weird Al didn't give them a thing. So anyway, so I think, for all those reasons, I would urge you, dear jury, to find my client
a classic.
A classic.
Yeah, I think I like the description of him as being, I don't know if national treasure is quite the right, but almost like an icon that can't really be touched. Right. For example, Madonna was once a huge icon and is like an object of ridicule today. Nobody has any respect for Madonna in this day and age. Whereas Weird Al has just always been, I think that's the thing. Weird Al was always Weird Al.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton has always been Dolly Parton. She has not changed at all. Elvis gets ridiculed a little bit because he has that second act of his career where he's like fat and like living in Vegas and not really the same guy. So I think Weird Al is an icon. It certainly has classic status. I think you kind of need to know who he is to understand the culture broadly construed. So yeah, I'm going to vote for Weird Al. This album's okay. I think my favorite song is this song is just 6 words long. And that's the best on the album. As a kid, I really liked I Think I'm a Clone Now. I think that was my favorite.
Of course, yeah.
But in general, it's, whatever. It's just a Weird Al album. But altogether, the opus of Weird Al is pretty good and definitely worth listening to. And maybe I kind of want to check into some of the later stuff from the 90s that I never got a chance to listen to.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Yeah, I vote yes.
Well, sweet. All right. Well, we put that one to rest. Thank you very much. Yeah. And cheers to that. I'm using a metal cup, so I can't make the sound.
I am using a
plastic Yankees cup.
Yankees cup we got for free at a game.
We're both kind of day drinking losers today. But in any case,
yes, definitely.
All right.
So,
Well, thanks for that. What's next? What's on our agenda?
oh, the next thing, let's see. The next thing is going to be a book.
Hmm?
And I went through a little bit of a deliberative process here, but I actually started reading the first couple of pages of Neuromancer by William Gibson.
Good.
And I have read William Gibson before, but not this book. And I just was kind of hooked. I kind of want to read the rest of the book. So
Very cool.
I got it from the library. I'm ready to go. I think that's going to be our next show.
Great. Well, that'll be a good one. I haven't read it in 25 years, so I'm looking forward to reading
It's
it
a
again.
breezy read.
Yeah, it's
Really
super
easy to
fast.
read. So I
Super fast.
recommend all the Toasting the Classics fans, both of the Toasting the Classics fans,
Correct. Both of you.
get out there and get it and read it, and then you got plenty of time, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.
That's right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Dave McArthur, peace out.
This is Clint Lanier saying see you next time on Toasting the Classics.
That's it for episode 76 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, stay tuned to find out what crazed cyberpunk concoction we'll be imbibing as we discuss William Gibson's Neuromancer. If you'd like to get in touch, please send us an email at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, and any parody ideas we can steal and market in our own names. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ReactiveNuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.